and good afternoon, everyone. A very happy Vesak to all of you, all the venerables, my Vandana, and all the ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to be here. And I have to say it is both a privilege and also a delight to be here on this Vesak occasion, because this is the way we should really celebrate Vesak together, contemplate the Buddha's teachings, and do something useful and practical out of these Buddhist teachings. So the topic for now is how to apply Buddhist wisdom to the almost intractable problem of world peace. It seems intractable because so many people have tried to solve this over such a long time, but usually it has turned out to be very, very difficult. So does it make any sense that we as Buddhists can do something about this very difficult problem of world peace? And first of all, I'd like to make the point that Buddhism is very much about peace. If you look at the Buddhist path of practice, it is about the whole practice from the very start to the very big end to the awakening experience itself is really about peace, going up in incremental values all the way to the highest peace, which is, of course, Nibbana or Nirvana itself. So Buddhism is very much about this, but Buddhism is also about external peace. Not just about the internal peace of the heart of each individual, but also externally. Because external peace, says the Buddha, is actually required to be able to develop the inner peace of the heart. Without the external peace, there's too much commotion, there's too much argument, there are too many problems in the world that sitting down and doing your meditation or whatever becomes very, very difficult. And so Buddhism is also about external peace, and that is where this talk or this panel discussion we have today comes in very beautifully to talk about this particular problem, which is a perennial problem, really, for humanity. So the first of all, I would like to just make the point that Buddhism is not a utopian religion. It is not a utopian philosophy. It is not about establishing a utopian social structure where we can be at peace forever after. That is not how Buddhism works. And the reason why is because Buddhism, one of the fundamental ideas of Buddhism, is the idea of anicca, the idea of impermanence. And when things are impermanent, it means that there is no final social structure that can prevail forever after. There will always be changes. Whatever we establish will be undermined by our own defilements, right? It's our own defilements that are often the problem. And they will undermine the social structures that we make. And so a utopian peace is not really a Buddhist vision. And that is also already quite a useful thing to remember, because so many bad things have happened in the history of the world in the name of utopias. If we can take utopia off the table, I think already Buddhism will have made a significant contribution to proper idea of world peace. So what we can do then is that we can do things that are relatively creating world peace, improving world peace to some extent. That is what we should look to do. How can Buddhism contribute in this particular area? And for me, when I look at the Buddhist teachings, where I would like to look is in those areas where Buddhism is unique, different from all other kinds of religions or philosophies or whatever, what you have. And there's one thing where Buddhism really distinguishes itself from almost anything else that humanity has ever come up with, and that is the idea of non-self. Anatta is the one thing that really makes Buddhism quite unique in the history of human thought. And so how then can we apply these teachings of anatta to maybe to the problem of world peace? And I would propose two ways. The first way is to understand that anatta, non-self, has a very strong relevance for compassion and forgiveness. And some of the most important things that we do in the world to have peace is precisely compassion and forgiveness. If we have compassion for everyone in the world, if we have forgiveness even for the people who have wronged us, of course we're going to have a far more harmonious society leaning towards world peace as a consequence. So how can we then deal with people who maybe we consider having bad qualities? There are people in the world who are maybe promoters of violence. There are people in the world who are promoters of conflict. There are people in the world who maybe we don't agree with because of these kind of issues. How can we deal with the difficult people in the world? And the Buddha gave a very beautiful simile. And the simile is a simile of the sick person. The Buddha says it is as if a sick person is going through a wilderness. And when the sick person is going through the wilderness, there is no food, there is no drink, there is no one, there's no nurse, there's no doctor, there's no one to help out. So if a sick person is going through the wilderness without any kind of support, what will happen is that they will eventually die, or at least get very close to dying. And the Buddha says we should think of the so-called bad people in the world, the ones that have really bad qualities, in exactly the same way. We should regard those people with bad qualities as a sick person, as an ill person, as someone who is going to their own destruction because of their own bad qualities. It's almost, from a Buddhist point of view, if you have lots of bad qualities, your future is going to be very dark in the same way as a sick person is going towards their own demise down the track. So this is the Buddhist idea of how to deal with the difficult people in the world. And the reason why this works, and the reason why this is so powerful, is because the teaching of non-self means that who we are as human beings, we are essentially the conditions that have worked on us. If you look at the conditions that have worked on us throughout our life, throughout previous lives, or whatever they may be, that is how we are as human beings. We don't have an essence. We don't have an atta that can stand up against the conditions of the world and take autonomous decisions, so to speak. Our decisions are formed by our conditioning here. And once you understand that your decisions, your choices in this world are formed by your conditioning, you know that the person who is doing bad things, they are a victim of that conditioning. They are the victim of their past. They are, if you like, a victim of their own personality, because their personality is precisely the thing that actually has been formed by the past in this way. And once you understand that the perpetrators of so many crimes in this world actually are themselves victims in a very profound sense of the word, then we can have compassion for them. Then we can forgive them. And then I believe we are really on the track towards greater peace in the world. The second thing, I'm not going to follow your setup precisely, I apologize, I'm going to talk a little bit more. There's one more point I wish to make. The other thing the other issue here, which is at stake, is the idea that non-self can also be used in a way which promotes greater brotherhood and sisterhood in the world. And the basis for this understanding I take to be the Buddhist ideas of conceit. You will all know here that the Buddhist idea of conceit, there's a threefold conceit in Buddhism. There is superiority conceit, inferiority complex, and then there is the equality conceit. Now, the equality conceit, I think, must be one of those very special, unique Buddhist things. I don't think anyone has ever heard of equality conceit anyway. It seems to be the anti-conceit, right? But no, the Buddha says even feeling yourself equal to somebody is a kind of conceit. And this is very interesting, because when you hone in on those areas where Buddhism is unique, that is where you find the treasures usually on the Buddhist path. So what does equality conceit actually mean? Well, what it means is that we are always changing as human beings. One moment you may be very forgiving and very kind to other people. The next moment you may be upset about something. Another moment you are equanimous or whatever about things. We're kind of going up and down like this all the time. There's no stability in us. Who are we? Are we the good guy when we are on top? Are we the bad guy at the bottom? Are we the middle guy somewhere? And of course we are all of those and none of those. We are all of those because we are the sum of those things. But we are none of those because we're not those things permanently. They are not our essence. And so how are you going to be able to compare yourself to another person when you're always changing? One day you may be better because you have a good day. Another day you may be worse than another person because you're having a bad day or whatever. There is no basis for real comparison. And so equality is not really, we cannot regard ourselves as equal in that sense. So this is the idea of the equality conceit. But there's a very interesting byproduct of this, a very interesting point to be made. And this is precisely this idea that we're always wobbling, always changing, always moving from one thing to something else. You may be born into this world as a very poor person. You may be born into this world as one nationality. And over your lifetime, you may become a wealthy person, or maybe start out as a wealthy person and become a poor person. You may start out, as in my case, as being born in Norway. Now I'm also an Australian citizen. So things are always changing. And so then the question comes, who are we? Are we any of these things? Are we Norwegian? Are we American? Are we Sri Lankan? Are we Thai? What are we? Are we male? Are we female? These days people change their gender. So are we any one of these things? And this kind of opens up the idea to have an understanding of the people around us. And if you take into account the idea of rebirth, then, of course, the possibility of change is far, far greater again. One life you are born in a country in Asia, another life you're born in a country in Europe, then maybe you are reborn in Africa, or maybe in the Americas somewhere, hopefully not in Antarctica. It's too cold down there. So anyway, many of these possible places. And one life you're reborn as something in a wealthy family, sometimes from a poor family, sometimes you are intelligent, sometimes you are a dum-dum. Sometimes you are handicapped, sometimes you are mentally ill. The changes are so enormous. One life you are male, another life you are female. And so the point is, we have been all of these things in the past. All of these things are inside of us. And if we don't make an end of this path through the practice by doing the right thing, we're going to be reborn in all of those places in the future. All of those people, every person in this world is already inside of us, waiting to come out. And so when you see another person, maybe sometimes a person in very difficult situation, maybe someone who you don't want to see, you don't want to have anything to do with, remember to see yourself in that person. And when you see yourself in that person, no matter who they are, at that point you make a human connection. You make a human connection because you understand that you are just as they are. There's no difference between the two of you. And when you make that human connection, you overcome the problem of othering. Othering is the problem of pushing us apart from other people. You overcome the problem of othering, and then you can have compassion and understanding for every human being in this world. You can have a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood for every person in the world.